Sir, so man, back for another episode, bro. It's crazy that episode when it pertains to men approaching women and should they approach women in 2021, man. It's getting a lot of hits, bro.
That's getting a lot of play, man.
Yeah, man. It seems like that's a real hot topic, which is gonna lead us to our topic tonight. But before we start it off, like we always do, we want to thank all of our viewers, all of our supporters, all of our subscribers, all the people that follow us. Y'all know we couldn't do this without y'all. The Black Culture Podcast is for you, and we talk about stuff like this. Um, and tonight we want to talk about a topic that's been trending, but really hasn't been discussed. I don't think in a way that it should. And it's going to bring me to a question, and I would love for you to talk about this, bro. Especially with you being not just a man, but you also being a husband and a father of two boys, and they're going to have to grow up in this world. So I want to ask you this: what do you think about the pressures of being a man in 2021, and obviously the future that we're about to embark in?
Oh man, where do I start? That's the list goes on, because as a man, you're somewhat expected to be perfect. You have to be the strongest, right? You have to be sometimes you have to be the smartest. You have to be, and if you lack any of those things, you're considered weak or not good enough because you're not smart enough, you're not strong enough, you're not wise enough. If you compliment a lady in a way that baby she's not used to be complimented, it's considered sexual harassment. If you approach a lady and she doesn't think you're attractive, she may consider that sexual harassment. You're supposed to, you're expected. There's a thing about this, right? Since day one, a man, you come in the world as a man, and usually we go black, white, black, we are the Black Culture Podcast. So of course everything's going to be from our culture. But let's take right side of it. Every man, from the time you're born, you come into this world with expectations just because of your gender. High expectations. From the moment you come out your mom's womb, the expectations is for you to do a certain milestone of things just because you're a man. Think about that. And I'm not saying women don't come into this world with pressure. They have to have babies. Women, they go through a lot. But think about being a man coming into the world, definitely today, the pressure that's put on you. And you really never really sat down and thought about that. You're expected to be the head. You're expected sometimes to be the head and the tail. You're expected to be a leader. You have to know the answers. Think about this. The world looks to a man for the answers most of the time. You have to know the answer, right? And it's like you're as a man, you're raised and you're taught to be this, to have this toughness about you, to where it's just shake it off. No, you're a man. We'll deal with that. This is how men think about growing up. How many times you heard them say, "Hey, this is how men." Or this is how real men handle this situation, or this is how, but what really is considered a real man? I don't think there's one different way. I don't think there's one example of a real man. I think me and you, we are friends, best friends. We live our lives differently, right? You think a certain way, I think a certain way, right? But that doesn't make me more of a man than you. Doesn't make you less of a man or more, you know what I'm saying? But there's been this picture painted that if you're not this and a man, you're nothing, right? You have to get there, or you're not going to succeed in life. And let's not even we haven't even got into the mental health standpoint, of being a man. If you look over the past few years, suicidal rate for men are very high. Very high. And because we're trained, the pressures of, think about this, right? Imagine living in a world where if I mention this or if I say this, I'm a man. I can't say this. If I'm a man, I can't have this feeling. I got to shake it off. I can't let my kids see me like this. I just went through this a few weeks ago, thinking I'm a man in this house, right? If my kids see me down, if my boys, they should be able to look at anybody in this house and look at dad and be like, okay, dad, cool. Everything gonna be all right. Think about that pressure, right?
Right.
Of the world is going crazy. You just had a rough day at work. You might have gotten laid off. You might have had a bad day, got into it with your boss. You might have damn near got into an accident. But despite all of that, when you step into that house, your kids are going to greet you. So you have to put all of that aside because those kids, it's different, right? Most kids are used to looking at mom and seeing mom as, you know what I'm saying, mom show their emotion. But as a man, and I'm telling you all this because I just went through this, I didn't want my boys to look at me. And I'm thinking this is my exact way of thinking. Man, if they look at me and they see me tripping or they see worry on my face, my thought is putting myself in their position, man, dang, dad tripping. If dad tripping, things is really going to shits here. Like, dang, like, think about that. I'm like, no, I can't let them see me like this. I have to go out here, deal with this where they can't see me. Because if they look at me and see dad tripping, oh, if dad's showing emotions now. It's think about that pressure of being a man. You can't even in your own house. You feel like you have to put on this. You want to talk about pressure? Think about being in your own house and feeling like, man, I have to put this on because I don't want my son to see me. I want him to know everything gonna be all right. It took my wife to tell me, like, yo, baby, show that emotion. Because if you act like that, guess what? They gonna act like that. They gonna go through the world. And you see what I just did there? That's the generational curse right there. That's the cycle right there. Because they seen me do it, so they gonna think, man, my dad ain't nothing bothering my dad. My dad had all the answers. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And they gonna go through life thinking that's how it's supposed to be. When really, to me, that's unhealthy. Because now I've influenced my son to think, to show him that you never show your emotions. Think about how many times we heard people back in the day say, never let them see you weak. Never let them see you like that. They see you like that, they gonna think you weak. And it took my wife to point that out to me. Like, hell, you have to, you're showing your boys that they can hold emotions in. They're gonna get older, and eventually that energy has to go somewhere. It's got to come out one way or another. It's gonna come out.
Right.
And to me, when you talk about pressures of being a man, it's just the pressure of trying to hold an image to the world. Because, like I said, from the day a man is born, from the day a child boy is born, he comes into this world just because of his gender, his expectation. He's expected to accomplish and achieve and do so much just because he's a man.
Wow, man, you made some excellent points.
And I didn't mean to go on so long, man.
No, I'm glad you did, because you made some points that I didn't think about. And one of them that comes to mind, especially when you talk about you having to wear that hat of always being, strong and acting like nothing is bothering you, is that you don't have anyone to teach you about having to wear that hat. For most of us men, we don't have somebody that talks to us about the things that you just talked about. So I hope a lot of fellas get blessed when they do watch this or listen to it, because that's something that we have to actually figure out for ourselves. And there's so many of us that have to do it. And at the same time, you and I just talked about it, we also don't feel like we have anybody to talk to about it. Whereas women, they get together and they talk about everything. Men, even, and that's funny, bro. Think about this. Even when we're together, we don't talk about our issues.
You talk about anything. You'll talk about sports.
We talk about sports.
You talk about
politics.
Food. Yeah,
women,
you talk about anything. Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't talk about the things that's really bothering us, and it usually takes something real serious for us to actually address it. Whether it's a illness, because let's face it, a lot of these diseases are caused from stress. A lot of these diseases. Just like as well as I know, a lot of us have been dying from heart-related diseases, kidney-related diseases, which isn't just food. You also have stress that goes right into it, right? But another thing that I wanted to touch on briefly is the pressures of society that they're putting on males nowadays from gender norms, right? Feminism and these labels. So let's be honest, right? When we were growing up, we didn't have to deal with the pressures that society is putting on males today. So for example, if if a man does something that women don't like, nowadays they label it toxic masculinity, right? If and I was reading a post, I believe yesterday, where, and this craziest thing. So I grew up, my grandparents were from down south. I grew up where my grandmother served my grandfather first, and everybody else would eat after him. It didn't happen like that all the time, but it happened sometime. And I didn't see anything. That's just how I grew up. That was a sign of respect. Man of the house get the first plate. Hell, he pay for everything anyway, right? Nowadays, women would call that misogynistic. They would call that toxic.
You know
They
what's
got
funny, man? You
they
just brought
got
that up. I literally seen a whole Facebook post about should the man eat before the kids, and it was like,
right.
I don't know, man. It was like, and it was just like, seeing people's different opinions, right? Some people feel like, hey, yes, the man should always eat before the kids. Some was, no, I'm feeding my babies first. But it's like, so I'm into this point, right? Traditionally, maybe you look at that like, hey, the man is supposed to eat first. But I mean, just because it's traditionally, that doesn't mean that's how it has to be. To me, it's whatever works for you. But no, people was really like, you talking about an aggressive conversation,
Right, very,
about
very
like,
aggressive. Right. So to the fact that you would label that as misogynistic, like that's a huge misuse of that word, because you serving somebody a plate first has nothing to do with a hatred of a gender, right? Because let's flip it around. If the woman got served first, is that misandry? Where you hate the male gender? No, they're not going to say that. So to me, it's really whatever we don't like about men. And here's the problem, because they're generalizing. Every man ain't like that. You got a lot of good men out here. And the fact that they have to live up under these ridiculous standards now, all of a sudden, in society, that adds additional pressure on just being born male. So you can't just be a guy that, is a good person, goes to work, provides for his family. Nowadays, you have to be so much more than that, just because, quote unquote, they, which I don't have a clue who they are, certain women, agendas, film, and if you notice, and they're putting a lot of this in the media to brainwash the young boys of today. So now they're questioning their identity. That's another big pressure. When you go to school and you seeing dudes who look just like you walking around in high heels and wearing makeup and painting their nails and doing all of this and that, and they're deeming that as acceptable. And I'm not saying whether it is or not. I'm just saying you're going to question your position and your gender if you're seeing that as a norm within our society versus when we didn't see that before.
Yeah. And it's like I said, like, I don't know why I keep going back to this. Like, from the time a child, like a baby boy, is born, he comes in the world with so many expectations. Think about it. Because I did it with my kids. You'd be like, man, he can go to the NBA. He going to be a doctor. He going to do this. He going to do that. And I had to think, when my daughter was born, I didn't really say, you know what I'm saying? I was just happy to have a daughter, right?
Mm.
But most men want a son because believe it or not, even as men,
you want to live through that son, right?
Believe it or not,
exactly.
even as men, we put some of that pressure on our seed
Absolutely.
too, because like, oh man, I want to do this. I want to be the president. I want to do. So you already come into like to the world, and to me, I believe speaking life into kids, but also there's a line there, because some people, like we've seen it, like it's not just in movies where parents will push their kids to the point where their kids like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, no, you gonna go and be in this field. And you've seen parents like because that's what they wanted to be. They literally pushed their kid to know, you're gonna be a doctor, you're gonna be a doctor the whole time. The kid like, I never even wanted to go to medical school. My
Right.
parents want me to go there. So think about like, it's like definitely if you come into, think about being born into, and a lot of people may say this and say like I'm crazy, but think about being born into a rich family as a boy, as a young man, right? And you're the first boy or first son. You know how much pressure that is to take on your father's legacy? Like you're expected to do that. And if you fall short, or if you come up short, or you don't hold up to what he was, it's like it's like the whole world is like, dang it, you're a failure. Look what your dad did. You can do that. That's why it's like I look at a kid like Bronny, right? Yo, his dad is LeBron James. Think about it. Your father is LeBron James, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're expected to accomplish, if not more, as much as he did, just based off of who he was. Now, I'm sure Bron is grooming him. He's going to be ready for that pressure. But just in general, as an average person, think about that.
Well, to that point, his father is LeBron James. And I say that because we all know LeBron isn't putting that pressure on him. And he's telling him, look, son, if this is what you want to do, I fully support you. If this ain't what you want to do, I fully support you. So we look at it, his dad is LeBron. He's looking at it, my dad is LeBron. And because his dad is LeBron, look, the pressure inside the home is always going to be greater than the pressure outside the home, right? Especially when you're in that position, because it's one thing having a parent, and I don't know if you ever saw that movie, Born Rich. They interviewed one of the heirs from the Johnson and Johnson family, Trump's daughter, and some other very wealthy families in New York. And I'm talking about elite. And they were talking about how they all grow up with this pressure to succeed. Imagine if you grew up in a household where that pressure didn't exist and your parents supported what it is you wanted to do versus working for the family business, becoming a successful doctor, lawyer, whatever, right? Imagine if you were able to sort of walk your own path with support to do that. Now, I'm all for you pushing your kids to be successful, but at what it is that they want to strive for. So it's like if you're gonna do it, be the best at it. Don't and do the best that you can do. That's basically what I'm saying. Like to push somebody to be number one. If they're not number one, you still got to support them in that same vein as if they were, because they need to be number one to you, right? But I get your point, and that really is environment. But like you said before, just being a man and you having a male son, you want to push him because you feel like because he's male, that's what he's supposed to do.